when sometimes people ask you, what are your degrees? Or those things that you used to be given by the state, those honors and all that kind of stuff. I sometimes think that is not of much consequence, because those are not the things that are going to really tell the world who you are. And so I think if you see somebody beginning to call upon those titles, it means that they are desperate. And maybe it should be seen in that light. One has reached a point where they can't easily answer back some challenges. But I think it's not titles that make a person. It's character. It's things like that which do so. I just want to react to the first issue of how come these people don't do what they need to do, and their leadership is wanting. Many of these people, apart from the usual love for corruption, for tribalism, nepotism, ineptness, and all those kinds of things, they in their work they focus on firefighting. You're a leader, and you use your time. There's this small thing, you rush there, and there's another small thing, you rush there, and all that kind of stuff. And when you do that, it can't be leadership. It's firefighting. So that, for example, what one would expect of leadership in this instance in our country, it is something that in political discourse, sometimes it's called adaptive leadership, where really you focus on the big issues. Like now, what, for example, the president perhaps should be doing, and one hopes he's doing it, is to ask, there is this emergency of the Americans are withdrawing their support for HIV/AIDS, the ARVs, and so on and so forth. So, what is it that now has to be done so that this gap, this very, very serious gap, is filled? Now, if you do that and people can see that you have really taken on board this issue, then they will say this is leadership. So, really, leadership is what you do when you have those difficult situations and you do it with your people, so that there is co-leadership. Again, even when there was the 25th June movement or the Gen Z rising, instead of doing the thing that you think is convenient and will give you ready remedy of abductions, arrests, intimidation, sowing fear, blah blah blah. Suppose now you said this is a different issue, and it's a big issue, and the youth are saying they're excluded, they don't have citizenship. So how do you now deal with that with the youth themselves and with other generations to answer that question? Now that would be leadership. So, and even in terms of, for example, in when this government and other governments before, when they decide that this is going to be a manifesto, uh, uh, to really be in a situation to provide real leadership, you say, what is going to be our legacy goals? What is it that when we do it well, it is going to change our country in a fundamental way that people will say, wow, the needle will be moved and the people will remember you. And then we can ask, since independence, what has any of our leaders done which we have remembered and it has been sustained? And maybe the only leader that one can say, let's interrogate, is 10 years to see something like that, may be Kibaki. So I think that's why we are struggling with this absence, paucity of leadership. And of course, when we tell them that we are not seeing your leadership, they get angry, because either they are not capable of providing leadership, or they are focusing on other things that actually undermine our country, like the corruption stuff blah, blah, blah. And that is why they will not accept people who try to show that it can be done different. They will always, suppress those people. And in the past, some of the people have lost their lives, which is, of course, very unfortunate. So I think this question about the negative ethnicity in our country, it is something that started actually in colonialism, because the colonial people wanted to divide and rule. And therefore they say, this tribe, they say, this tribe is this way, another tribe is a thief, another tribe is very good soldiers, another tribe, likes this and that. So the seed, like a stalk, is said, the seed is planted. And then when we come to independence, the so-called independence, then instead of that being reversed, actually it is even done more. And that is why, for example, there is a state, and there is therefore government in this state. But there are other quote mini states, because you'll find that there is a leader who is recognized in a community, whether it's a Kikuyu, it's a Luya, it's a Kalenjin, it's a Luo, Kamba. Some of them have multiple leaders, but there's hierarchy. And therefore there is that other mini state, so to speak. And these guys, when they come together, they don't mind that formation. But when they now come together in the big state, they agree on what is to be done. And so therefore it is as if you are told, you take care of this mini state, I will take care of this other mini state. But when we have issues, we'll come together and ensure preservation of this system that we have inherited, and we perpetuate. Now, all these manifestos that are done, you don't see them being followed through, and this was talked about. You don't see them being followed through. You don't see them, really giving birth to, the development that they promise. And then later on, there's another manifesto. And if you ask them, how come you don't follow your manifesto, they get angry because you're asking inconvenient questions. The political parties themselves, I keep on asking this question. If a county is not performing well, and your political party has most of the representatives in that political party, how come the political party is not also asked to be transparent, to be accountable, to really explain why this is happening? So the political parties will just be there when it's about election time, and then the tribal thing will be tribal thing will be used, and blah blah blah. So that I also don't extend my conversation. Can somebody be this wrong? That question was asked, but it goes back to, what is the leadership that you are providing? What is your model for leadership? What has been your preparation for leadership? What if you respect the people, if you respect your country, if you are patriotic, then there are things that you can't do because they are opposite, what leadership should be. And so I don't think it's something which is happening because somebody doesn't know. It is intentional. It is, let me put it correctly. I think it is happening because, in terms of what a leader does, there isn't a lot of focus on that, but there's a focus on the things that a leader should not do. And then there's a crowd which is saying, we are doing well, let's go on, we'll amass a lot of money, we'll buy the votes again. And as was said earlier, if people don't come, if the votes are not enough, we shall look for other votes, and there will be enough, that kind of stuff. And so as I learned, I really, and of course also appreciate there was, I think it was Redento talked about the song System ya Majambazi. or it was stocks. I don't remember. Uh, Even in the Gen Z moment last year, music was very, very instrumental in terms of mobilizing people, encouraging them, and even in the celebration of a victory, because you must celebrate the small victories, the big victories. There was even song and dancing. So that is another very, very important thing. And the social media, the spoken word, all those kinds of things. So I want to land by really saying this. If the Gen Z spirit is dampened, if young people now feel tired and they decide that, they did enough, the other generations did not come in forcefully, and they, say, this is the end, we are not going to move forward, and we are going to be either intimidated or bought by other people who want us to go and push their own agenda. If that happens, probably the country will stay for another maybe 20, 30 years, because Mau Mau happened in the 50s. Then it was hijacked. In the 90s, that's when again we have a strong movement, and it's also hijacked somewhat. And we now come back to 2020s. So you can see those gaps of how people get remobilized. So this is why, for me, this thing is so important. And I think the young people have to come to a position where they say, we are not letting go. We are going to really get involved now in this leadership. We don't want, just to say, like we will vote for anybody else because it's a vote against Ruto. Because that is what happens sometimes. Whatever lesser evil, or whatever is called lesser evil, people vote for it because they say we are voting against so and so. Therefore, it's not necessarily even a vote for that person. So I think there is a lot to watch. There is a lot to talk about, and there's a lot to do. I learned.